All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Off the Court podcast. My name is Dalton Solbrig. I'm one of the founding members of Off the Court. And of course, I'd like to give a huge shout out to ESPN Honolulu for giving us this amazing opportunity to come on and bring athletes, coaches, people of all different walks of life to talk about athletics as a whole and kind of the mental health background that goes into it. So today I'm joined by David Milostan. He's actually a close friend of mine from high school. We played sports together back in the day. He's from Lindenhurst, Illinois, and he's played all kinds of sports since he was younger. He played soccer and basketball in high school, and then he graduated from Carthage College with a degree in exercise and sports science and a minor in secondary education. He's now the freshman head basketball coach at Lakes Community High School, and he's been coaching athletes from grades 4 to 11 for about the last 6 years, coaching for various clubs and AAU teams. And now he actually just this last year started his own basketball program called Illinois Triple Threat. So Dave, thanks for coming on, man. It's awesome to talk to you and to get your viewpoint on some subjects here.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I'm glad we get to have this conversation, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be sweet. Okay. So yeah, the way we've been doing this is, we just kind of want to give the people that we bring on free range to talk about their mental health as an athlete. So let's dive in for when you were an athlete, talk about any mental health issues that you might have had, maybe a teammate had, and then we'll talk about coaching in a couple minutes.
Yeah. So I know probably my biggest thing was always trying to balance school and sports and making sure I was always getting good grades and taking care of everything, that homework, tests, quizzes, all that, before I got to my sports stuff. So that's probably the biggest, my biggest thing growing up was just trying to balance that and making sure that I was getting my stuff done, because I know there's a lot of times I was putting off due dates and leaving stuff to the last minute and putting a little stress on my parents at the same time. But I got through it. So, but I guess like a couple more in high school, I feel like sports and my mental health came together more so my sophomore year. My dad actually got a new job and we were planning on moving to a completely different state. And I don't know if I just kind of gave up on school and was like, I'm just going to get a fresh start at this new place. Didn't really think about the whole transfer of paperwork and school records and transcripts and all that coming over with me. So, my dad wasn't really around at that time. He was kind of going to work during the week and was home on the weekends. And for me, it was kind of struggling because he would always be at my sports games and I'd always make sure he was there. I was kind of look for him in the crowd kind of thing. And to not see him there was tough for me, and trying to balance that and trying to talk to him as much as I could, just kind of let him know how I was doing and how things were going. And that was my first real tough battle, and some of my grades started to slip a little bit, but ended up turning it around a little bit later that year and kind of balanced it all out, and everything worked out and everything kind of happened for a reason. So it was all good and worked out. I got to play basketball with you for all 4 years over in high school, so it really worked out in that sense. And another one, I guess, senior year, when we were playing, and it's the middle of basketball season and my girlfriend breaks up with me, and she just so happens to be the manager of the basketball team too. So for me, when anything would happen really when I was younger, I'd always try to use basketball as my outlet, just kind of go shoot around in the driveway, dribble, whatever, just something to take my mind off it. Basketball was always my thing. So when her and I broke up and she was still kind of there and I was kind of having a rough time getting through that, and seeing her every day after practice, after practice, during games, and not having that same relationship with her and not being able to talk to her, it was really tough to try to adjust to that and then keep playing and being myself, being myself as the player I was on the court. And that took a really big toll on me. And I lost a lot of weight at that time. I wasn't eating a whole lot. I didn't really have a good outlet to go do things, and nothing on any of my friends, but was more on me. I just wanted to be by myself. I didn't want to be around people. I just wanted to go in my room, sit in my room, play video games, watch TV. I didn't really talk to anybody for a little while. And then I would always try to get back out and try and hang out with people as much as I could. And you feel good for a little bit, but then it would just kind of revert back to, I'm just going to go sit on my phone and just not talk to anybody and kind of just be by myself. And it took a while to get over it, but I mean, my friends were there for me. And of course, making that little playoff run senior year definitely helped a little bit. But my friends being there for me was probably the biggest thing, and being able to talk with them after a little bit after it happened, or a couple months after that. And it all worked out. And I'm happy I went through it, because I definitely think it's helped shape me into the person that I am today. And I didn't really have anybody to talk to right away. And I think mental health wasn't as I guess wasn't as known when we were in high school, and it was hard to, I guess, be an emotional guy in that, with that stigma of being a tough guy still. So I just I went through it for a little bit, but then once I started to open up, my friends kind of had similar stories, or similar things happen to them. So it kind of made it easier. And then we were able to just talk it all out. So that definitely helped a lot.
Yeah. And I think there's a great like little piece of advice in there, is that for sure there's other people going through similar, maybe like even almost the exact same thing that you are. So, if you are a young athlete, like, talk to somebody. Like, there's a pretty good chance that somebody else is going through the same thing. So to go back to that first kind of event when your grade started to slip, like you thought you were going to move. Was there like a noticeable kind of turning point when you kind of started to figure things out? Was there somebody that helped you through that? Was there certain things you started to do that kind of helped you get through that time?
Yeah. So actually, my English teacher at the time, Emily Goldkind, shout out to her. She's helped me out a little bit that sophomore year. She and I had a conversation, and I didn't realize how I was acting in the sense, like at home versus at school, and just being two totally different people. And she had told me that my mom had a parent teacher conference with her, and my mom actually broke down and started crying in front of her. And it didn't really click until that moment when she told me that. And I think it was just realize it's not who I was. It's not who I am. And just that, I think, was the biggest turning point. And then she was always there to talk to me no matter what was going on. My grandma had actually died that year too, and she was kind of there to just talk to me for a little bit and get me through that too. So definitely her, just kind of her opening my eyes and being like, listen, this isn't who you are. Like, you got to snap out of it, and you got to turn this around. And it's not just affecting me personally, but it's affecting the people who are around me, my friends, my family, especially. And I can't be acting like that in that sense, in that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to have that through your mother, I'm sure was like, all right, yeah, I gotta clean up my act a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And then to go to that kind of second event, like, ended relationship. And then it was a really tough couple of months for you, seeing your ex-girlfriend every single day at training, when that's supposed to be kind of your thing.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's more of like, all right, yeah, I can't talk to her today. Like, what am I going to say to the boys? Like, kind of always, a little bit depressed, I'm sure. Going back to that time, I know you said, basketball was kind of an outlet for you. And at that time it wasn't. One of the biggest things that we talk about with Off the Court is kind of trying to be more than an athlete, trying to find your identity away from sports, because, that's, kind of a unique situation to have,
right.
to have your ex-girlfriend as a part of your team. But things like that happen, things like that. There's obstacles that kind of prevent you from having that normal training. So going back, was there any outlets you wish you would have maybe tried to do? Do you wish you would have tried maybe talking to somebody a little bit earlier? How would you have gone about doing something like that?
I probably talking to somebody a little bit earlier probably definitely would have been a big thing for me, just kind of being able to express the way I was feeling and express my frustration and just kind of let my emotions go. But I could have definitely tried using, in basketball was my outlet. I could have talked to other people and seen if I could go to like an open gym, or if I could stay late after a practice and practice with the sophomores or the freshmen or something. Just as another way just for me to kind of refocus on what I was doing, instead of almost being distracted during our practice and worrying about that, like, oh, I can't look at her, like she can't look at me kind of thing. And I don't want anyone talking to her, but just probably, I mean, there's definitely other things I could have done, like gone somewhere else or extended my time in just a different setting without her there. I probably could have picked up a hobby or something else to go along with it, just so when I got home, I wasn't really thinking about it too much. It was kind of something else to take my mind off of it. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think, during that story, you made a couple of really great points that, back when we were in high school, talking about mental health, like, wasn't really a thing.
Right.
And it was almost kind of and, I hate to say it, but it was almost like kind of frowned upon. It's like, oh, that guy's going through some stuff. Like, yeah, he probably should go figure that out, and again, as a male athlete too, we always want to have this kind of like, yeah, I'm going to be fine. Like, I don't need to talk. I'll just push it down. I'll push it down. But I think it's really great that you kind of found some friends, to talk to it about. And I think it's great that it was your teammates, right? Because I think one of the things that we need to change about sports in general is it needs to be kind of like a team-wide thing, that these conversations are just more comfortable to have, right? And you don't need to have them every single day, right? But from the coach, even like the athletic directors, all the way down to the players, the parents, everything like that. I mean, it just needs to be, people can't freak out when it gets brought up. It's like, hey man, yeah, I have to see my girlfriend at my ex-girlfriend at practice every single day. Like, I'm not feeling that good, and that's, it's like, duh, like, of course you're not. Like, how is anybody supposed to be, totally normal in that situation? And then kind of looking back, and now that you have a little bit more experience and you kind of look back on kind of those experiences that you went through, do you have any advice for yourself? Maybe going back to that kid who thought he was moving and started slipping in school, and that kid that has to see an ex-girlfriend every day, because like you said, you're definitely not the only one going through grade troubles. You're definitely not the only one going through girl troubles. So what advice would you give yourself back then?
I'd probably tell them, embrace the struggle. It does a lot more for you than you think it does. Yeah, it's going to suck. And there's a lot of times where life does suck, but in the end, there's going to be some hill that you got to climb, and you're going to get over it. So, and once you get over it, you feel a lot better. I can tell you that. So, I'd probably say just embrace the struggle and be okay with not being okay. It's okay to not be happy. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to not want to be around people, but understand that you got to talk it out. You got to go to somebody. You got to use resources that you've got to make yourself feel better. Don't hold it all in. Like, let it out, let it go.
Yeah. And I think that's great, because I think, one of the more important things about getting through struggles like that is kind of understanding that it's not going to be overnight. It's going to be a slow process, but, definitely when you take a step back and you realize how many resources you really have or had at that time, maybe mental health wasn't really something that you would normally talk about back in high school. I was the same way. I was like, when I was in high school, I don't even think I had a single conversation about mental health.
No.
And, looking back, I'm like, I had guys like you. I had guys like the rest of the guys on my basketball team. I had really great coaches. I had, guys on my volleyball team, parents, brothers, like cousins, everybody. The amount of people that you can talk to is way bigger than what you think. And maybe you think it's a little bit embarrassing to open up, but nobody is going to shine that light on you and be like, stop being, so dramatic and stuff like that. Like nobody's going to say that. Right. Okay, cool. Now let's move on. So you're a coach now. You coach basketball. You coach at Lakes High School, where the alma mater, and then you also,
baby.
Yeah. And then you also just recently started your own team. So kind of talk a little bit about just in general, how has your view on mental health changed going from kind of being an athlete to now being a coach?
I definitely see it more so now than when I did when we were playing. Even when I first started out coaching, like I could tell the differences between a kid who's in school versus a kid who's just coaching, a kid who's in school and playing sports and doing other things throughout the day. These athletes, I've worked with fourth graders, fifth graders. I've worked with juniors in high school, seniors in high school. So I see everybody at all ages. And the biggest thing is they never have just one thing on their mind. They got a ton of things going on. They got stuff going on at home that we don't know about. They got stuff that's going on at school, and maybe they got one class, pet, family, something's going on. They're not just thinking about basketball when they're in there. They're thinking about, what am I going to eat for dinner? What's my mom going to make me for lunch tomorrow? What's the cafeteria going to have? Is this science test going to be difficult on Thursday? Is this AP test we're going to take in a couple months going to be hard? So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed is a lot of these kids they don't want to just talk about basketball. They want to talk about sports. They want to talk about football. They want to talk about their favorite singer, favorite rapper. They want to talk about these other things. And I think that's one way I've built relationships with a lot of the athletes that I've coached, and a lot of their mental health, I think, or I don't want to say mental health, but more, they feel more comfortable talking about their mental health when you kind of build that relationship and you see what their interests are, what you can talk to them about, what they're doing in school, and just understanding that it's more than just basketball when they come to practice. And like, there's always a 50 whatever million things going on through their head. And it's good for them to kind of talk about it, because if you talk about it, then you actually see a difference in their personality lighten up as well too. And I think you even get more out of them just with them feeling more comfortable and talking things out too. Kids love to talk, so they can talk about anything and everything, whether it's Fortnite, the new skin they got, or if it's how they jumped over their couch in the basement at home and jumped off the trampoline and did a flip and then dunked the ball, something like that. Something, just whatever they could think of, kind of. So I think that, yeah, definitely understanding when they're coming to us, they're not thinking just, oh, it's basketball, it's go time. They're thinking, yeah, it's basketball, but what else is going on? What else could be happening? And just trying to find that balance to get them to get into that rhythm and flow of balancing everything and prioritizing and timing of when and where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think, just like you said before, I mean, for a lot of these kids, it's probably the same as you, like basketball is probably some sort of outlet for them. And, that's kind of a time where they can, while they have a million things running through their mind, it's like, I'm at basketball practice. All right, now I can focus on one thing, I can just play ball. And I think that's great. And that actually leads perfectly to my next question, because I'm sure you as an athlete had relationships with different relationships through the coaches that you had growing up. Do you find yourself kind of using anything that you learned from coaches when you were an athlete in terms of, mental health, creating those good relationships? I mean, anything that you bring into kind of creating a good environment on your teams?
Definitely. I mean, one of the things that I do all the time is, like, I make sure every time that we get into a huddle, it's eye contact with me. And the biggest thing with the eye contact is showing me that you're paying attention to me and that you're locked in and you're ready to go. So like mentally, you're fully there, you're ready for basketball. I don't just talk about basketball with these kids either. I'm asking about how's dad doing? How's mom doing? And how's school going? How's that one class going? Oh, you had a test today. Just trying to get to know them and get the feel for them. And I think using that, and my relationships with my coaches growing up, and I'm lucky enough that the varsity head coach at Lakes is the varsity head coach that we had when we played. So for me to have that relationship from going from an athlete to a coach, it's definitely different because I think there's a little bit more respect for each other in the sense of now I'm a coach and he's a coach versus I'm your coach versus you're my athlete, you're my player. Where that relationship has grown, and I feel like I can have conversations with him that I wouldn't have a conversation as an athlete with him. We can go hang out. We're old enough now. We can go to the bar and we can talk about things and kind of just hang out. And I think position or rank, I would say, makes a difference in, but the definitely like building the relationship I think I had with our varsity coach has led me to create the relationships I've had with all of the athletes that I coach now, and using that tone of, yeah, we're here to play basketball, but what's going on? What's your favorite video game right now? What rank are you in FIFA or what's your level in like Fortnite, something like that, just to kind of get their mind and kind of like ease themselves, like, all right, I can hang out with this guy, I can kind of talk to this guy and he's a cool dude kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I think it's so important that, I go back and I remember the best coaches I had growing up were the coaches that would just ask me about, my parents, my other interests, and you feel like you have that relationship. And it just makes everything more comfortable. And on some level, it makes you just want to compete that much harder for that coach. Have you, as a coach, like up until this point, have you had any players kind of come to you and say, I'm having some issues with that? And you don't have to mention names or anything, but have you had any players come up to you and say, hey, coach, I'm not really feeling that great today. I'm not really sure what's going on.
Yeah. I've definitely had, there's a couple of players that I can think of off the top of my head, that definitely I've gotten a text from them like, hey, coach, I need a mental health day. Like, I'm not really feeling myself right now. And I got a lot going on in my head. And I just want you to know kind of like, that's what's going on. And I'm very okay with that. And I totally understand and I get it. And the biggest thing for me is just the communication part and kind of let me know what's going on so I can help maybe, or I could guide you to where you need to go to get help, or just kind of being there. And that's one of my big things. I tell all my athletes, like, I will pick up the phone. If you call me, send me a text, I will try my best to answer as quick as I can. Or if you call me and answer the phone and just to be there to talk. Got a couple of players. I have one player who, unfortunately, his brother just passed away, and that's a big thing for him. He's super close, and basketball is his outlet, and I know it's his outlet. Well, I'm going to use that, and I'm going to take that with him, and I'm going to try and get him in the gym as much as possible, just so he can be himself and he can kind of help himself get to where he needs to be, to where it's okay for him to just hang out at home and hang out with family and not really think about it. But yeah, that communication part, it's just let me know what's going on and I can be there and I can assist. And it's okay to, like I said, it's okay to not be okay. Just take the time you need and kind of get yourself right.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great. And I think, just like we've said a few times already, that sports in general, I think, and especially in these situations, like basketball is an outlet for these kids,
Right.
And on the one hand, you're their coach, so you're seeing them for a couple hours every day. But on the other hand, it's like if basketball is an outlet for them, maybe they're not really showing those typical signs because they're like, okay, I'm finally at basketball. Like now I'm in a good mood. Right. So I think having those lines of communication outside of regular practice times is for sure huge, because then you can really see like, what do you like outside of practice? You know, how is your relationship with your family? How's your relationship with your friends? And yeah, I mean, that's really great. So one of the biggest concepts that is in sports right now is mental toughness. So of course, as an athlete, we want to be mentally tough. And I think that the word over the years, like as mental health conversations have gotten a little bit more prevalent, is kind of almost has a negative connotation to it now. But I think it's an important thing to have in sports. And it doesn't mean I push everything down and I never talk about anything. You know, like you said, it's okay to not be okay. But on some level, as an athlete and as a coach, right, we want to be able to come to training and leave those things on the side, right? Go to a game and we don't experience those symptoms of depression. And, you know, that's the work that has to be done outside of training, so that once you show up, it's like, okay, I'm here. I did the work. You know, I managed my stress before I came to the game tonight. I'm ready to go. So how do you kind of find the balance between, for your athletes, you know, being mentally tough and being engaged and always want to win, always want to compete, and having that kind of killer mentality, and balancing it with the, you know, the idea of it's okay to talk about mental health stuff. You know, it's okay to not be okay.
Right. So that's actually a really good thing that we try to implement that at Lakes. We talk about mental toughness a lot. We try to use more, and me specifically, I try to think of like the next play mentality. I make a mistake on offense, I turn the ball over in a basketball game in a crucial situation. Well, I'm going to get back in defense and I'm going to make up for it because I made that mistake. That's something I try to teach all of the freshmen that are coming through is it's okay to make that mistake, but it's how you react to that mistake is where your mental toughness is at. Are you okay with making a mistake? And are you okay with making up for that mistake later on? I have no problem if a kid turns the ball over. I have no problem if a kid messes up a defensive assignment. But if you mess up that defense assignment and you put your head down and then you jog back on offense, or you turn the ball over, put your head down and you're jogging back on defense and the other team scores, well, that's an issue. You're not hustling. You're no longer a part of the game. You are now making the game 5-on-4. So that's one thing, that mental toughness part, and trying to just be okay with that mistake, but move on to the next play and keep moving forward and keep going forward, because that's one play. You miss one layup in the game. How many people on the floor care that you missed that layup? There's 9 other people on the floor. And I bet you 4 of your teammates do not care that you missed that layup, but they're going to care if you don't get back on defense and you don't do your job defensively, or if you don't continue to play. So that next game or that next moment, next like quick in and out, thinking, like, stop thinking about it. It's over. It's done with. Get rid of it. Move on. I think that's one of the more ways I'm trying to teach that mental toughness aspect.
Yeah. Awesome. So final question. We got your advice from when you were an athlete, you know, going through those experiences. What advice do you have to somebody who's just about to start coaching teams, or maybe has been coaching teams for a while and is struggling to kind of create those good relationships that you talked about, kind of address mental health in a way that, you know, doesn't injure your, you know, practice time? Because as a coach, obviously you want to win. That's why you coach,
right,
you know, on some level. You know, what advice do you have to a coach that is, you know, either brand new or maybe struggling to kind of incorporate that mental health side of the athletics?
Try to find that great middle ground, and not the good middle ground, that great middle ground. You can find a balance anywhere between talking about the uncomfortable stuff and playing basketball, because it's just going to end up making your team better and more comfortable, and they feel more free in a way. to just play the game and be themselves around each other. I have a great relationship with almost every single kid that we played with from our senior year of high school. And I think all those guys kind of bought into what we were doing, and we were playing for each other. We weren't playing for ourselves. And I think kind of finding that balance of, hey, this is what we need to do to be successful. All right, how do we do it, and how do we be successful? So finding that great middle ground of talking about that uncomfortable and managing and fixing the mistakes and calling out players, and players understanding I'm not calling you out to put you down, but I'm calling you out to make you better so you don't do it again. And I think that's the biggest thing we can work on. And as coaches, especially, and I think that's probably the best thing a coach can do. Find that great middle ground right away and run with it, keep going with it, and just be there for your athletes.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. And you made a great point. Like that team we had senior year, we're all still super close friends. And, as a new coach, I think if you're worried about talking about mental health too much and kind of creating that comfortable environment to talk about it, just realize that, if you get all these kids on the same page, and especially with you, like you to the team and then the team to each other, I mean, they're just going to want to play for each other that much more. They're going to want to play for you that much more. So it's not a matter of, I don't want my players to be worried about anxiety and depression all the time. It's like, no, it's kind of the opposite. Like if they're comfortable talking to each other all the time, then the chemistry on that team is going to be incredible. Oh yeah.
It's crazy how much they just open up, and it opens up everything else that much more. And it's really cool to see.
Yeah. All right. So Dave, thanks, man. It was awesome having you on the podcast.
Yeah.
Again, thanks to ESPN Honolulu for giving us this awesome opportunity, and tune in next week for another episode of the Off the Court podcast. See you later.
Thanks for having me.